Talk, episode 11. Today we're going to be talking about horror games. Should be a good time. So we're going to be talking about some spooky horror games. But first, hot topics!
Hot topics!
We all went to the Toronto International Film Festival. Didn't we? Kathryn, Chris, come on, back me up here.
Yeah,
They're going to think I'm
totally
a liar.
We did.
We all took the week off, right? From Friday to Friday.
More accurate
to go
accounts of
watch.
what happened, yes.
Yeah, to go watch the films. We watched 2 to 3, even 4 films a day during that time.
That's crazy. Why would you do that to yourself?
We did a 4-film day, but it started at 11 and ended at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were all spaced out really nicely. So it wasn't as fatiguing as our 3-film day, which was back-to-back-to-back films. And that was really upsetting.
You live in like a nice central area to where all the cinemas are, right? So you can pop back home and stuff like that too, which is nice. We don't have that luxury. So we if we have a big gap between movies, we either spend a bunch of money to come back home for like 2 hours, or we kill time downtown. So
Chris, after all was said and done, how many movies did you see during the Toronto International Film Festival 2017?
We saw 15 films, of which 10 were actually pretty good. 5 were only okay, but we didn't see any real stinkers, so it was good.
That's good. That it speaks volumes to the programming capabilities of the festival programmers. Chris, what was one film that you want to tell everybody about today?
So one film that I really want to tell everyone about is called The Death of Stalin. The Death of Stalin is a film about, drumroll, the death of Stalin. So Stalin dies, and then everyone in his internal committees starts fighting over the scraps of power and who's going to take over. It is by the guy who did Veep. I don't know the name of that guy, but if you like Veep.
okay.
Oh, it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
It's by the lady that was in Seinfeld. No, it's so the guy who made Veep made this movie, and so it's a lot in that style. It feels improvised, but it's all written, and that's kind of the best feel of improvisation, when it's all written down and all the improvising actually works, instead of, say, in those Judd Apatow films where you get 3 minutes of improvising and only half of it's maybe funny or lands.
It's got to be Paul Rudd. Don't let anybody else go off script. Just Paul Rudd. But who's in this Death of Stalin? Stalin himself?
No, he's not. He's been dead. No, it's Jeffrey Tambor. It's the guy with the eyes, Steve Buscemi.
Oh, the guy with the eyes.
The guy with the eyes. I described him the other day to somebody as the guy with the face. You know, the guy with the face.
And were they like Steve Buscemi?
No, they didn't. And then they understood why I said the guy with the face. But it's those two. It's a few other people that are pretty famous, and it's a hilarious, dark, comedic take on the death of Stalin. All of like the little bureaucracies that arise up. It's really good. If you get a chance to see it, it's coming out. I think in wider release in January, but it may get a limited release before January.
So if you live in a major city, that's good, probably.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if it does come out before the end of the year, that it'll get like at least a writing nomination, because I think the writing's fantastic. So yeah, Death of Stalin, really good.
If you can wait for it, 2 years from now it'll be on Netflix, so you could just check it out there.
Yeah, I mean, or like 6 months from now it'll be on Netflix, because that's how these things go now.
Now, what people want to know, I think, is, when you go to the film festival, a lot of the celebs are there. A lot of people want to go see the celebs, take pictures of them eating a sandwich or something. Were you able to touch Steve Buscemi?
No, Steve Buscemi was too far away. I did see Cuba Gooding Jr. walk by, but I didn't know it was
Did you
Cuba
touch
Gooding
him?
Jr. No, because someone
Why do you
yelled.
want to touch celebrities? Don't
Just to see if they're real, if they feel like other humans.
Someone yelled, "Hey, Cuba," and then the guy smiled, and I figured that it was Cuba Gooding Jr. That's kind of how I pieced it together. For everyone that doesn't know, the Toronto Film Festival is a film festival that takes place over the course of a week in the middle of September. And the movies are open to the public. It's a little bit different than the normal festivals, the bigger festivals, the more high-profile festivals like, say, Cannes or Venice, where members of the public can't go. This is very much a festival where people can go. You can just get tickets to see pretty much any movie you want to see. Some of them are more expensive, but it's a very publicly accessible film festival, which means that we can go see 3 to 4 films a day if we want.
Yeah, and I think it's why like the biggest award that's at this festival is the People's Choice Award. That doesn't exist really at the other ones because there's just no public opinion there. It's usually a committee, right, that votes on the best films of that festival. So this one is the biggest prize is a publicly voted one, which is pretty cool, I guess. And it's one that like directors and film producers and stuff covet, right? Because
I mean, films that have won that People's Choice Award are films like Slumdog Millionaire, which was going to be a straight-to-video release prior to the film festival.
Right.
And then it won the People's Choice, and then it won an Oscar.
Yeah.
King's Speech won People's Choice. Princess Bride, the year it came out, won People's Choice. Tons of great movies. Silver Linings Playbook.
Oh yeah, that's right. Like those are kind of high profile ones. So it's also a really big deal when like smaller foreign films win, and
or even this year.
Yeah, and this year it was
Three Billboards.
Three Billboards and Highway or something.
Three Billboards outside Ebbing, Mississippi.
And it's a pretty small indie release, and it's a really big deal that, and especially for the subject matter, because I think that one is dealing with some dark stuff.
Jai ho, those are good films. Kathryn, what did you think was a particularly good film that you saw this year?
Okay, so everyone knows I've been super hyped about seeing the Guillermo del Toro Shape of Water. I was on Twitter just really gushing about how excited I was, and I was making P2 really jealous because he loves Guillermo.
You were saying before that it was going to be your favorite film of all time. Super hype train. You were on the hype train. You had a ticket.
It started, this is going to be my favorite film of the festival. I think it's going to be really good. And by the end of it, she was like, best film all time, getting a face tattoo.
Full blown on the hype train.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm just about to go see the best movie I've ever seen in my life. I just know it. I know it's just going to be the best movie. The first time I saw the trailer, like a month ago or whatever, I was like, this is going to be good, right? Like, it's exactly what I want from a Guillermo del Toro movie. And it just looked, like, it had this beautiful look to it. And then it started getting really good reviews.
Yeah.
Because we saw it like right at the end of the festival. So like it had already played twice and a few other times for the press. And so we saw it after all the preliminary reviews were already coming out, and it was getting like 10 out of 10 critic reviews and like, just
101% fresh.
Yeah, it was
super fresh.
Super hype.
Super fresh.
Which, you just really hope that it can live up to it, and it totally does. It is this beautiful film set in, like, right in the middle of the Cold War, like, 1960 era, and it looks it right away. You're transformed, like, transported right into the 1960s. Like, it has this palette to it, and then you realize as you're watching it, so it's kind of like the basic story, and you can see it in the trailer, is that the American government has found some kind of creature, and they're holding him in this sort of secret lab, and there's cleaning staff there, and one of the cleaning staff is a mute woman who finds a connection with this creature, right? And it's just this beautiful story. And as we were watching it, you start to realize, because water, of course, is a big major theme of it, and it has this like beautiful palette. Like you watch it and you're just like, everything has this. If you go back and you watch the trailer, you'll see it. You'll see that it has this sort of wash over the visuals that makes it feel almost like it's underwater the entire time, or it has like a very like water themed, like I don't know how to explain it, but if you watch the trailer you'll see it, right? The costumes are a bluish color, the walls are a bluish color, like everything kind of just plays into this water theme.
The entire facility looks like it could be a swimming pool
Or
complex, almost like the
or
way the
almost
tiles
like
are.
a submarine even, right? Like
Yeah.
you're inside the belly of a submarine kind of. Like it just has this look to it. And the other really cool thing is there's a movie theater that's heavily featured in it because the main character lives above it, and the screenings that happened at TIFF were in that theater. So it was kind of fun to be sitting in the theater and having shots of the theater, and everyone in the audience is like hee 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 because like we're in on this little thing. So it was like just a really neat experience to be in that theater watching it, and then having it be maybe not the best movie I've ever seen in my life, but definitely the best movie I've seen this year. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It is 100% my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. P2 is gonna love it. He'll get to see it in like 2 months or something. Just 2 months, don't worry. He'll get to see it.
Okay, there's a couple things I wanted to say about the movie. You're gonna love Richard Jenkins. If you don't know Richard Jenkins, he is a character actor who was in like Step Brothers, and he was really famous for this one movie he got nominated for, The Visitor.
Right, but he's also like he was the dad in 6 Feet Under, I think, the one that passed away right at the beginning, the funeral director.
And you're gonna really like him. And Michael Shannon as the villain. I mean, come on, you can't pick a better villain than that guy. He is menacing, and it's probably my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie.
Yeah.
I think that it ties the politics to a monster movie better than Pan's Labyrinth did. That could just be because of my perspective living in North America, that I didn't understand the politics of Pan's Labyrinth as much as other people did. But I really liked this movie. Shape of Water was great.
Kathryn.
Yes.
You were on the hype train. Did you feel as disappointed as I did when I was on the hype train for No Man's Sky?
Oh no, nowhere. No, I was not. I was not disappointed. No, I was not at all disappointed. Like I loved it. I really, really loved it. And maybe it is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. I still need to
You need some time.
Rejig that. I need to rejig that list and assess it.
So you got on the hype train and you got off at the station you wanted to get off.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. That's
delivered.
Very rare that the hype train delivers you to where you want to go, because normally you're like, this golden train is going to take me to places I will love, and it drops you off in the middle of the worst part of the city.
And I was like driving that hype train. Like I was the conductor, right? Like I was super hyping it. Like I was really excited. And like even as we were in the middle of watching other movies and they would end, I'm like, yeah, this is good, but I can't wait till like 5 days later when I'm gonna watch this great movie. But we should probably let Myles talk about whatever movie he was in.
So I saw The Square by Ruben Östlund. I think that's the pronunciation. Ruben Östlund?
Östlund, maybe? I don't know. It's Swedish. He's Swedish.
And it stars Claes Bang.
Claes Bang,
and Lizzie Moss from The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah. Is that too informal? Lizzie Moss? Elizabeth Moss?
Best friends, call her Lizzie.
Lizzie, it was pretty good. This is the director who made this movie called Force Majeure. If you haven't had a chance to see Force Majeure yet, try to look that one up. But The Square is like a satire of the high art community, and it's hard to explain. Why did I choose this one?
It's a really hard one to explain because it is a little bit absurd as well.
Yeah, it's like an absurdist comedy about the high art society and wealth going to inappropriate places.
It's like, how do you build a viral marketing campaign out of like high art ideas? How does high art intersect with rich people? How do we have our social construct? Like, am I kind of hitting all the main beats here?
Right, and people going so in depth trying to understand reality that they become so disassociated with the actual reality of things. And it's a series of kind of scenes. That's how I would describe it. Yeah. And the narrative is just tied together by themes more than a story. Although it does have one of those as well. The film is hilarious. A lot of the jokes hit really hard for me, and I would totally recommend checking it out if you do have the opportunity to see The Square or his previous movie Force Majeure.
I think also the Square like really pushes extremes. Like if you feel a certain way about viral marketing, and then it'll show you kind of like an extreme version of viral marketing, or your connection to your social media or your mobile devices and stuff like that, and like how important those things are to you, and then it kind of shows you like the extremes of what you would do to protect those things, right? And so it kind of, it's like a magnifying glass on all these like little things that you don't realize, you like how connected you are to your phone and stuff like that. I felt like it kind of did a really good job of that. And then it also does a really good job of like when it really pushes maybe what you consider to be art, and is this really art?
Yeah,
And it
and
pushes you so far that like you are as uncomfortable, like you're so uncomfortable, and you know the scene that I'm talking about. It's like kind of the climax of the film, and you it's really pushing the audience in a way that most films don't do, right?
and it asks,
You're usually so far removed, like you're just watching a movie, but this one is like, oh boy, like I don't know what I would do if I was in that. Like it
yeah,
feels like
it
I'm
really
there.
puts you in situations with the artwork, and it asks you what you would do or how do you feel about this
Yeah.
artwork, and it's just so good. I
Yeah.
want to watch it again right now, but I can't.
But you know
We
what?
have a podcast to do.
The three of us, though, did all, thanks to Chris and his lovely wife, Nina, they were able to get us tickets to probably one of the hottest movie tickets to get. Like, it was impossible for us to get tickets
To the Disaster Artist
to
midnight
Yeah.
screening.
a midnight screening of The Disaster Artist. And Chris and Nina had two extras, and they offered them to us.
And right after they offered it to us, somebody walked by them in the line, and they made an offer to Chris and Nina for those tickets.
Of like 300 a pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
I mean,
You only get $50 from us.
Total.
Total.
Nobody took her up on it. So that's just how
Wow.
Wow.
she came by 2 or 3 times. Nobody had taken her up on the offer. So
$600
everyone-
for a pair of tickets.
Yeah. And
What
on
I would have
StubHub,
done was I would have
on-
followed her. I would have,
Robbed her?
yeah, I would have like, yeah,
You
let's
would've
do this down
robbed
this
her.
little back alley. And then I would have kicked her in the shin and grabbed her money and ran. I'm not a fast runner though, so that's not a good plan. But yeah, you were talking about, sorry, you were saying.
No, let's
on-
go back to this, actually.
Yeah, let's explore these robberistic tendencies.
I play a lot of video games, a lot of violent video games, so I have like a heightened sense of like, I don't know.
You just think life is like GTA now?
Yeah,
I mean, we
just-
live in the
You know what,
the
if-
Greater Toronto area, so you think that it
If
has
things
something
go
to do with
poorly, I will just respawn in a hospital and be perfectly fine, right? Like I'll just have to find a new gun
that. Yeah.
and steal another car.
In any event, The Disaster Artist was amazing. The atmosphere was amazing. Tommy Wiseau was there.
James Franco, his little brother.
Dave Franco.
Yeah, Dave Franco.
Allison Brie,
Alison
who's in
Brie was
it,
there.
and Greg Sestero.
Yeah. If you like The Room, okay, first of all, you should watch The Room. Everyone watching this would probably...
It's a cult classic. It's not a good movie. It's a cult classic.
The worst movie.
Yeah, but it's so bad it's good. It's like it's so bad it's become charming about how bad it is.
Yes. Okay.
And then Greg Sestero, who was in The Room, wrote a book called The Disaster Artist about the making of the movie. And I found out about that because I listened to the audiobook, and in which Greg Sestero does the reading, but he also, for all of Tommy Wiseau's parts, does a Tommy Wiseau impression in the audiobook. And so it made it really fun to listen to because he's doing the impression the whole time.
Yeah, so Tommy Wiseau is like, he's just a really odd character, but the thing is, he has this really secret personal background, right? We don't know exactly where he's from. We don't know how old he is and stuff, but he sounds...
And where his money comes from.
And where his money, because he has apparently an unlimited amount of money. And so there's all this air of mystery around him, but... Like, one of the big things about him is his accent. Like, you can't place it. It sounds kind of Eastern European, right? And I guess maybe you know more about his background. But so that when they're doing this accent and when James Franco is doing a spot-on impression of this guy, it's kind of funny because you don't know exactly what accent it is. And
You know, halfway through the movie, I forgot it was James Franco. Like, I was like, that's Tommy Wiseau. Like,
That's a big compliment.
I think part of it was because I didn't expect anything from James Franco.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of, you feel like you've seen everything James Franco's got.
I don't
And
think you
he
have.
really knocked it out of the park with this
Yeah.
performance. I thought this was a great performance.
There are always Q&As at TIFF. They are sometimes the worst.
we saw a movie where literally they were like, why did you end the movie that way? You could have ended it other ways.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, this is the way that I thought was the best.
Yeah.
Right? This was the best ending, I
Yeah,
thought.
that was this year, right? The
Yeah,
German.
it
yeah.
was Fatty Atkins. The best question this year that we saw was the one and you were there as well, for Louis C.K.
Yeah.
The I Love You, Daddy. Why did you film this in black and white? It's 2017. Basically.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
Oh, that question was brutal.
And then Louis C.K. was just like, yeah, I don't know, I just like black and white movies, even though I could have filmed in color. And he was like, even though I could have filmed in color, I chose black and white. And it was just like, really just saying like, stupid question, like, it's not important.
I think all of the Q&As, especially the one for the Louis C.K. movie and the one for the Disaster Artist, can be found on YouTube. So if you want to watch those Q&As
nice.
after the movies, they're there for you guys. And the last thing I want to talk about was Mother. I don't want to get into Mother. Darren Aronofsky did it, but he really loves to explain what that film means. If you see Mother and you walk out of it and you go, I wonder what all that was about, I don't know. Maybe you have problems watching movies. Because I think it's pretty obvious.
So one of the critiques I've heard about Mother is the advertising and the kind of marketing of the movie as a horror movie when it's less of a thriller and more of like a philosophical, psychological, biblical
It's a
movie.
very intense movie. Really intense. It really builds up. And by the end, your like mouth is agape at like kind of all the crazy things that are happening. There's a few like jump scares, but it's not a horror movie per se. But it's being sold as a horror movie. So if you're going into it thinking that you're going to see a horror movie, you're going to see a horrifying movie, but you're not necessarily going to see something like It that's designed to like scare you out of your seat.
Right. I mean, I've played some pretty scary games, and you have both played some scary games, so we're going to talk about those coming up on Horror Games.
Hi, this is Player One of the Cartridge Club, and today I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite podcasts, Media Mavens. The Media Mavens is hosted by Pam and Riley, and they cover a wide range of topics from television to video games, K-pop to movies, and they make every show entertaining. In an industry that's awash in 30-something-year-old dudes, it's refreshing to get a point of view that doesn't sound like a carbon copy. I highly suggest you check out Media Mavens. They air every second Monday on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. You won't be disappointed.
Horror Games and I have a very interesting past. I was a Nintendo kid all the way up till Super Nintendo, and then when the N64 came out and the PlayStation 1 came out, I switched to PlayStation because it had Twisted Metal and Resident Evil, games that I thought were unlike anything I've ever seen before in video gaming. And I remember playing that first Resident Evil game and just being terrified of the zombies and maneuvering my way through the mansion and solving the puzzles and never knowing what zombie's going to pop out in a poorly rendered cutscene at any time. And the voice acting, whew, we've been over that. But how about you two? What were your first experiences with horror games?
I don't think I really played like proper horror games. I didn't play until really meeting you, but I did play a Sierra game. I think it was a Sierra Games point and click adventure called The Colonel's Bequest, and it was not a horror game, but it was kind of like spooky. You know, your uncle or someone dies, and you're called to his. Oh, the colonel dies. Yeah, because it's his bequest. And so you go, it must be your grandfather or something, and the whole family gets called to his mansion, and so you're kind of exploring, there's like secret passages and things like that, and people are dying, and they're, clearly trying to eliminate the competition so that you're left with all the money. It's a puzzle game, really, but it has like a horror theme to it. And that was probably the only really scary game I played growing up.
everyone in my age group kind of got computers, desktop computers at around the same time. And one of the early games that came with these desktop computers with CD-ROMs in them, because they were all the ones with like the CD-ROMs, 486s, 66, 33s, they all had CD-ROMs. And one of the games that came to show off how good your CD-ROM was The Seventh Guest. And so I was probably like 8 or 9, and my cousin had a copy of The Seventh Guest, and we put it in, and we played like 5 minutes of it, and I was an 8 or 9-year-old with a pretty active imagination, and so I don't think the game had to work too hard at creating like a really atmospheric mansion where you were exploring, but you were also seeing the ghosts of the mansion go about their like evening of this one night, and you were trying to figure out like what happened, but you would like meet up with some scary people. There was some scary stuff happening. It was like a point and click adventure. But it was all like Ouija boards and scary ghosts, and I was like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. Turn it off.
You know, point and clicks like adventure games, they don't have to work too hard to be scary. They're just scary as is. Because you're in like this empty place most of the time with just puzzles around you, and you don't know the backstory yet. You have to kind of work through it yourself. So your imagination is going nuts. Trying to, and it always goes to the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Yeah, like you're always hesitant to walk through a door, click something open. You're creating suspense yourself, right? It's just a door. Go through it. It's probably the only way out.
It takes a lot of time to get through that door, right? Like maybe you need to solve a puzzle per key and use 3 keys to open that one door, you know, or 3 symbols to open a door. It's that building of anticipation, that building of what's behind that door that I need to spend an hour and a half solving puzzles to get past that door. And then the door creaks and you go, oh, turn the game off, uninstall.
But there's also other kinds of games that can be horrifying. Like I remember playing Doom 3. I was very excited to get Doom 3. There was all kinds of reviews saying Doom 3 not so good, but I was like, it's still Doom 3, so I'm going to pick it up. And then I couldn't play more than like an hour and a half of it because the demons would spawn behind you, hit you, and then you turn around, there'd be a big demon behind. Like it was a little unfair in terms of the demon spawning, but I thought that it created an atmosphere that was like legitimately scary. Like you'd be walking down the hall and then something would like, you'd hear something behind you and you'd be like, ah! Like there was a lot of jump scares in that game that I was particularly susceptible to because I'd be like so focused on what was happening.
Yeah, it's really easy in a video game to create jump scares, right? Because they can just have you focusing on anything. Like you need to pick this lock. Okay, this is what I'm focused on. And then if they just introduce any kind of loud noise, even that will scare you because you're concentrating so hard on something else that, you know, it's really easy to startle you in those situations.
Or what's even worse, a child laughing. A child laughing will get me every time. It could be like, and I'll be like, whatever. But if it's a in the background, that's it. I'm done for. That's the most terrifying thing in the world.
What if you like are walking down a hallway and you hear a
That's also a little creepy.
A little creepy.
One of the games that Myles and I played together, and we did a playthrough on our channel because you thought it was the game that you played as a kid, Clock Tower.
It was Clock Tower, but it was the Super Famicom translated to English. That's the one that we played, and I played Clock Tower for the PlayStation. Both games are Clock Tower 1 and very different games.
We had a repro of Clock Tower for the SNES that had translation. So we played through that. And it's also point and click. It has the Scissor Man.
Yeah. And
that noise that happens when the Scissor Man shows up is like this like classic horror sound, that ree. That sound like would get me every time. Like I would freak out. And then the only way to get away from him really is to just run and hide. So you have to run until you can find a place to hide. It's still like SNES graphics. It's as scary as a 16-bit man with like tiny little man with giant scissors can be.
It was a very different game than pretty much anything I've ever played on a Super Nintendo or a 16-bit console was. Playing a point and click on a Super Nintendo console is already kind of weird. Like they don't exist. Yeah. And then playing a horror game, which actually depicted like dead bodies and stuff, was crazy. Like I can't believe that game came out for the Super Famicom. And I understand why it wasn't brought over to North America. we were going crazy over Mortal Kombat of all things, and
Yeah.
Night Trap, which were, you know, nothing really compared to Clock Tower. So I mean, I love the Clock Tower games, and it's been a while since I jumped into any horror games recently. I haven't played Resident Evil in a while. Why not turn on that Resident Evil 7, see how it's going, see what's going on, what the going ons are.
Oh yeah.
And it's first person, which is different. I'm used to my third person Resident Evil games, so that was right off the bat jarring. And then I played about 10 minutes of it, and I was too scared. There was a storm outside. I was using headphones because Kathryn was editing, and then I turned the headphones off, and then I still couldn't do it. I couldn't get into it. I was in a kitchen area after just getting into the first building, and I couldn't do it. I just turned it off. I was like, there's no way. Can't do it.
It's too scary. There's such a thing as too scary. Although, it seems like one where maybe we could sit with each other and play, but I just heard Travis from Polykill podcast talk about playing it with his friend Brian, is it? And like he said like they would scream and stuff too. So I'm like, well, then I don't know. Like I'm already pretty bad with horror and jump scares. Like with Chris, I'm not good with them. Like they affect me. Like I get really worked up. We could try to play it together. Or maybe we could bring it over to Chris and Nina's and all four of us try. Because Nina likes horror. We want, so we should address, we're hoping that Nina would be able to join us, but we lent you Until Dawn because we wanted to be able to talk about it.
Yes.
But it didn't work out. That's okay. We'll get her on some other time.
We bounced right off of Until Dawn. We played with you guys for about an hour, and then we played probably another hour of it. And at the end of that, we were like, something's probably coming down the pipeline, but I don't know that it's keeping us so invested in what's happening currently as like a two-player experience that we need to keep going with this. And that was... So for everyone that's a real fan of Until Dawn, sorry, catch you on another game, I guess, because I don't know that we're going to spend so much time with it.
I mean, we played Until Dawn all the way through, and we really liked it.
Yeah.
We really
But
enjoyed it.
I think it is very much like a movie. Like you're making movie decisions for these characters, right? There's not gameplay to it, right? So it is really just walking around, making choices, and then the most that you do are quick time events. So I can understand,
Right.
like, if you don't like that, or if you're not buying into the story, then, like, there's just no reason to keep going, right? And I get that.
I think it was mostly a buy-in problem because I think we both enjoy games where you make decisions and those decisions play out over the entirety of the game. I think that's not really the issue with Until Dawn. I think it was like, what? Why are they going back to that cabin with all the friends that basically killed his sisters? I'm sure they're going to figure this out later, but I don't know. This is a bit much for me right now.
It does really pick up, and then the story gets like really good
Sure.
and crazy and stuff. But because there are so many characters, it takes a really long time because they basically want you to develop every character so that when
Right.
stuff goes crazy, you're invested in all of them. Like you understand all of those
Right.
characters and where they're coming from. Then all the stuff that they're going through means something more, I guess.
I also think that a video game, by a lot of people's standards, needs, especially a full-priced one, needs to be at minimum 10 hours, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And Until Dawn doesn't want to give you choices that will make you lose your characters too early on in the game, because then there's less game.
Yeah.
Right? So it takes about like 5 or 6 hours of the game before you actually make decisions that cost characters their lives. And because of that, it's a slow burn.
I do kind of want to play it again because, like, when we played through, I think we got through the game with the bare minimum that can survive. I think there's a way to kill all of them, and I think there's a way to save all of them, and then there's anything in between. But I think 2 is the minimum that will survive, and that's what we got. And I was like, oh, it feels so unsatisfying. Like, I want to go make some different choices. And you can go back and just play certain chapters so that it affects, like, your choices from that point forward. And I think if I had more time and not a million other games that I need to play on my backlog, it would be something that I'd be interested in going to see. I'd be interested in seeing how the ending works out for other characters if they survive than the two that we saved. But are you playing another horror game, Chris?
We are not playing horror games. I was going to talk about horror board games. Some board games that we've played together. We've played Betrayal on the House on the Haunted Hill. We've played Elder Sign together. And have we played Dead of Winter together?
Yes, we have. That's the only time we've played it.
Those are the 3 games I would say are the most horror themed. Oh, and I guess I have Arkham Horror, the card game, which is kind of a solo experience or a 2-player experience. But I'd say it hasn't been as horrifying. Elder Sign, I think you guys would agree with me, was not super horrifying.
No, it's just thematically you're just trying to keep a Cthulhu from coming.
Yeah, it's like a very H.P. Lovecraft style game. So like that type of eldritch horror. And I think that Betrayal on House on the Hill, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
I think that game is more of a role-playing game. So if you're going to play that game, make sure you're into role-playing with your friends, because the game falls flat if people aren't in character. Like when you're playing the game just mechanics alone and you're not paying attention to the story, there's not much game there. So take that with a grain of salt if you're going to pick that one up. But the one that I like the most, and the one that I think is probably the easiest to get into, is Dead of Winter.
Dead of Winter is about a zombie apocalypse. Every one of you is playing as a character in the zombie apocalypse, but you're playing as 2, maybe 3 plus characters. All of them have their own backstories. All of them have their own interesting back personas. They can die pretty quickly. Like, there really is a lot of consequences to some of your actions. There's a die that just kills characters instantly. You are playing with up to, say, 5 people around the table, and the big thing is that one of you could be, it's not necessarily the case, but one of you could be a traitor. So you're all living in this colony. One of you could have your own reasons for wanting to betray the colony. You contribute to challenges every turn. You've got a challenge you've got to complete, and you contribute to the challenge face down with these cards, and so you never know who put what into the challenge, so the betrayer can be pretty secretive about when they're trying to betray things. Everyone either wins or loses together, except for a betrayer character. Like, there's the precondition that you all win together, you all beat the challenges, but also you only win if you do your own individual things. So everyone's got their own motivations for doing things. Everyone's trying to win together. There's a betrayer who could turn on at any minute, and it's not even like the zombies are particularly scary. It's the other people. When you take your characters to the gas station and then someone comes along with you to the gas station for no good reason, you're like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Why won't you give me gas so that I can take the car? I think it's easy to teach, but some people have found it a little complex.
It also has, like, isn't there also an element where, so you are active players in the colony, but then there's also kind of like a NPC colony that you're growing, or...
Yeah, and you have to keep feeding them.
You have to feed them. So it's not just that you're trying to get the 6 of you to survive. When you're actually getting provisions, it's for a larger group of people. So it's yeah.
And if you let those people die, morale goes down.
Oh, yeah, and if morale or food goes down at any point, you just lose the game.
What I really liked about playing that game is that when you chose to do certain things, it felt like you were doing those things. Like, I'm going to go to the gas station and try to find some gas. And then when you show up there, maybe there are zombies there that show up that you have to kill. And it just, like, it's a board game, but it plays out in kind of a visual way. Like, you can see this stuff happening. I feel like it's a good game because it feels like you're doing these things, right? The mechanics of the game really kind of helps feed that immersiveness.
There's another board game just called Zombie or Zombies, and that's basically the entire game is you walk around and you shoot zombies, and that's it, and you're just rolling die, and it's all mechanic and zero flavor. Like, you'll see the pieces and you see the box art and you go, oh, this looks like something I want to play, and then you start playing it and you're like, I don't feel like this at all.
Doesn't feel like I'm killing a zombie.
You know.
Dead of Winter feels like that. Feels like the way you'd want a good movie, a good zombie story, a good zombie narrative to play out.
Can you remind me, I know that the characters have little standees, right?
The zombies do as well.
That kind of helps with it. Like you can visualize because you can see them basically standing off at each other, and the zombies also appear. So it's kind of like if you could go and then there'll be a couple zombies, and then if you stay too long or if like some conditions happen, more zombies appear at that location, and it just feels like The Walking Dead, right? Like
Thematically, you go to the school and you search. Everyone gets like say a free search. So you're searching around the school, but then you didn't find what you need, so you need to keep searching. And in the keeping of the searching, you create some noise, and the noise may later attract zombies.
I forgot about that.
You're always pushing your luck to try to get what you actually need, but if you push your luck too far, things are going to happen. So it's constantly making decisions. Every turn, it'll be your turn, and there's a deck of cards that have all these kind of narrative things that happen in them. Like, oh, you found a girl at this, and she said this, this, and this, and now you have a choice. Choose two things. And that can play out, and that can have disastrous consequences too if you choose the wrong thing. And you're constantly having to make choices together. And again, one of you could be trying to make choices that are wrong for everybody. I had a game that ended basically on the last turn. It was the last turn we were going to win. The guy who was the betrayer, it's his last turn, the last turn of the game. He turns around and shoots one of our guys in the head. Morale goes down to 0. We lose the game. Like, and we all got up and we were like, get out of here.
You know, zombie stories are so much more about the survival than they are about the zombies.
Yeah.
You know, and surviving other people, right? And what people will do in these terrible circumstances. So it's great to see something that ties the narrative and the flavor into the mechanics so well for a board game. I think it would be interesting to kind of see Dead of Winter as a legacy game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What I mean by that is that there's a couple games out there that exist, Risk Legacy and Pandemic Legacy, and those are like games that you can play like a maximum of 20 times or something. And every time you play it, there's a change made on the board permanently for every time you play it again after that before the game is run out of choices. Yeah, I think that Dead of Winter would be a really interesting one because you could play through the whole zombie apocalypse and things get dire. Resources become more and more sparse.
Dead of Winter is a game that I try to keep my collection not tight because it's not a tight collection at all, but I try to keep it to like what I actually would want to play at any given time. And I feel like I'll probably never get rid of Dead of Winter. It's good. It's all contained in there. It's a good story when you play it. I don't get it to the table very often, but it's always a good time when I do. And so if you see a copy and you're even a little bit interested, and you can get probably 4 people together to play it that will be interested in something like it, it's good.
It plays best 4 to 6, you'd say?
I think so. I probably wouldn't play it with 6 people anymore, just because it adds on time, and getting 6 people, I'd rather play other things. I think there are better things
Captain
for 6
Sonar.
people to play. Captain Sonar and Rex or something like that, if they're really into it. But if you've got like 4 or 5 people, I think it's a lot like the Battlestar Galactica game. So if you like one of those themes over another, get the one you like the theme the best. But Dead of Winter, also very good in that vein.
I've been playing, sorry to go back to video games, but I've been playing
But
a
it's
couple...
zombies, right?
Oh yeah, zombies. I'm playing The Evil Within right now. And Evil Within is the video game made by the guy who made the first Resident Evil. I think maybe first 2 Resident Evil.
And it's Bethesda, right?
And it's a Bethesda game. Quick aside, the first episode of Flock Talk, I said I will never play a Bethesda game. Do you remember that? Do y'all remember that?
Oh, because like
I
the
played-
open world ones, though. I thought
That's what I thought they all were. And then I played Doom, Wolfenstein, Old Blood. I'm playing Evil Within.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you're a liar.
I'm
We
a
proved it here.
gosh
We can
dang
stop the
liar.
podcast. This was all about me wanting Myles to admit he's a liar. So now I'm done. I'm just kidding.
So what we're finding out is that we shouldn't prejudge things, guys. We should experience things first and then say we don't like them.
And yeah, absolutely. I gotta tell you, thank you so much for recommending Doom, because that game was amazing. Speaking of good horror games, Doom is amazing.
Doom's great.
But Evil Within, I wasn't sold on the first 2 chapters, but I kept playing, I kept plugging away at it, and it's just getting better and better right now. It's 15 chapters altogether, and I'm almost at chapter 10. It's kind of like a zombie game, but not really. It's like an internal psychological mystery with a bunch of jump scares and interesting creature creation.
I dislike the beginning, like the beginning part, which is the part you see in a lot of like, I don't know if it's trailers or like the demos and stuff like that, but it's got this guy chasing you and you were hiding in the locker, and it was just like really creepy and scary. I was like, I don't know if I can watch you play this game, but it has since kind of moved on from just being that to like a more exploratory kind of.
And it's actually beautiful. There's a few scenes in it. Like there's a scene where you're walking in a poppy field that really pops, like the colors pop.
Pops.
Nice.
Poppin' poppies.
And there's like scenes where you're on a cliff and it almost looks like Uncharted when you're looking off into the distance and see like a beautiful landscape. And it contrasts it by you being in a cellar with like a witch demon chasing you and you have to trap her in furnaces.
Oh yeah.
Who makes Skyrim?
Bethesda.
That's them as well, because it has that that mechanic, not that mechanic, but it's that little eyeball that's looking at you. So you know, if you're playing a rogue and it's got the little eyeball, but this is like if a monster is looking for you, the little eyeball starts moving, and then it'll stay open if he sees you. So I was like, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, that looks like Skyrim.
On harder modes, they remove it.
So that's to help
yeah.
you.
Do you find yourself just ducking for like a minute or two until something like it ends up going away?
Yeah, you know what? I actually, when I see that eyeball now, I just look for the thing that's looking for me because I maxed out my melee damage. And
So
I
he
can
just runs up to it.
Yeah, I do. And the enemies, that would be probably one thing that I would say is the common enemies that keep popping up. They don't level very well. So, like, they're just as easy as they were in the beginning of the game when you're learning the controls.
Oh, yeah,
and so you
yeah.
learn how to best them, like, pretty early on. That being said, what's happening right now in the game is I'll explore an area and then something will chase me, so I'll try to backtrack. But if I backtrack, it's filled with enemies now, and they just pop out. Yeah. So I think it's actually pretty good. I think
forces you to take on the thing that's chasing you.
Yeah, it's like there's no bad guys here at all, except that something's chasing you and you show up, and they're never like, it's not like they just spawned a bunch of enemies. They'll put the enemies like in a closet and it'll come out when you're trying to run away, or like you open a door and it's just staring at you with glowing eyes. There was one scene where it was a family portrait, except the boy's face was missing and cockroaches were crawling out of it.
Whoa.
And you're forced to hold X to get into a cutscene, and it's just zooming in slowly on the boy's face, and then all of a sudden another face of like a ghost shows up in that hole.
Scared the crap out of me.
It scared the Patrick Swayze out of Kathryn.
Yeah. I was like angry. I was like, why did that happen? Why did you do that? Why did you look at that painting? He's like, I couldn't help it. It was making me do it. And I was like, why would you look at it? It was
She
clearly
was so mad at me. I was like, you knew
I was
I was playing a horror game.
I was just like, why would it make you do that? You would never walk right up to the cockroach wall and put your face in it.
I think you would. If you saw a picture on the wall, like, what? Why are there cockroaches here? I sprayed last week.
I might shine a light on it, but I wouldn't just stick my face right in it.
If you were walking through a house and there was a cockroach hole, you wouldn't ignore the cockroach hole. You don't close off the wing of the house and be like, that's where the cockroaches live.
I would. I don't like cockroaches.
I'll let you investigate it then, Chris. But Evil Within, I don't know, like I feel like it really picked up for me too, just watching. Like I'm only kind of marginally following along, but I'm interested enough to know like what the heck is going on. What is like he's a cop, and I don't know. There's a lot of flashbacks and a lot of like weird stuff happening, and then also like there's puzzle bits too. So I like helping out with the puzzle bits.
I also tried to play a game called Too Dark, but I just couldn't see it. It was so dark.
Nice.
Too Dark is made by the person who made Alone in the Dark.
Oh.
And this is a isometric puzzle game. You play a detective who goes camping with his 2 children and spouse, and you're working on building the tents and they go for a walk and your wife is murdered and your kids are abducted.
I mean, what did you expect? This is why I don't go camping. This is why the outdoors are for there and the indoors is for me.
The game takes place 7 years after that, and you're like a rogue detective who is just looking for people who abduct children. There's 10 stages. The first one was abandoned amusement park, where a clown was dressing little kids up as animals and forcing them to jump through flaming hoops.
Oh, good Lord. I did not see this stuff.
And then they were also shipping children to other locations in crates, and you find a receipt with an address, and that leads you to the second place.
Oh, God.
What are you doing? Why are they leaving a paper trail? Hello, FedEx. Yes, I shipped 3 children in a big box. Oh, yes, I have my number. It's 03047-42. I'd really like to know where the children are.
And I'm surprised that they lived. Most of them lived through that shipping in the crates.
Oh, they're resilient.
Crazy.
Kids can take a lot.
So the idea is that he's looking for his 2 kids who've gone missing, and he still believes they're alive. Ammo is scarce, which is popular in these horror games, that it's supposed to make you afraid because you're down to 2 shots left on your gun or whatever.
And let me just interject here and say, Myles is a pretty poor shot. So it is a real concern when, like, most people would just, like, headshot kill. Myles is like, I'll shoot him in the shoulder 4 times instead. Until
I'm just going to graze his ear and see if he gets the message.
So I get nervous when he runs out of bullets. I'm like, why? No, just
And that's why I always level up my melee damage. One last thing I want to say about it is just that it's, I think, conceptually great. Like, when I heard about the story, that's why I wanted to pick up the game. But execution-wise, I think it's terrible. The gameplay is very redundant.
This game's garbage, but we're going to talk about it for a little while.
Yeah, well, hey,
it felt like it had potential.
It did have potential, you know, and you read the story and like, honestly, I want to play a game like that. Where, like, it's 10 different scenarios of child abductors that I get to kill and rescue the children from. That's a good motivation for a game. Like, it's interesting. But the game execution is just not there, and I wouldn't recommend people play it. So that's it for horror games. If you have a favorite horror game or a least favorite horror game that we did not mention on the show, or maybe we did, let us know by tweeting at Flock of Nerds using the hashtag FlockTalk. You will be entered to win a prize in next month's episode. Now moving on to Odds and Ends.
Odds and Ends.
So, just before we did this podcast, I went out to grab a couple of pumpkin spice lattes because it is October. And there was a giant yard sale on the whole street.
It's time for a segment we call Plastic Bag. What's in the plastic bag? Can you open the plastic bag and see what's in it?
So I got some stuff from the plastic bag. DVDs were $1 each, and they had a bunch of Blu-rays there. So for $1, I got Wall Street, Oliver Stone movie. I got Ghostbusters, Who You Gonna Call, on Blu-ray for $1.
Oh my God! In French, it's called SOS Fantôme.
SOS Fantôme.
And I got 2001: A Space Odyssey on Blu-ray
That's a good Blu-ray to have.
for $1.
We
Come on.
have literally watched 0 Blu-rays in maybe the last 5 years.
I traded my last copy of 2001 on Blu-ray for a bunch of video games on Bun. And for $2 each, we got, I think this is 4th edition, a Dungeon Master's Guide and a Player's Handbook for $2 each. That's a good price, right?
It's
Yeah.
for arcane, divine, and martial heroes.
And I also got this for $5. It's Dungeon Master Tile Set
Oh, those are good.
for 4th edition. And they've got tons of tiles inside. I haven't opened it up yet. to
We
see what's in there.
literally just got rid of all of our Dungeons and Dragons.
And the last
Oh,
thing
boy.
for $1 I got is this Monster Hunter Capcom illustrations book.
Oh.
And it looks really beautiful. I know that these things go for quite a bit. It's by Udon as well, so they know their artwork.
It's by Udon, so you can eat it when you're done with it.
So that was What's in the Bag?
What's in the bag? We're gonna look through the bag.
Kathryn, you were on Dollar Dorks.
I was on Dollar Dorks. People should listen, I guess. I was on it because I was a vendor at Barry Game Exchange, and then Nintendo Hodge, our friend Chris Hodgson, was the other guest. And it was hosted by Derek from Two Dorks, and it was a lot of fun. I kind of felt weird being on it because it's like, I'm kind of a vendor, but not really a vendor. But we've now had tables for the last few, so I guess I do know what it's like being a non-store vendor, which is a different experience, I think, right? Like, we're trying to get rid of personal collection stuff, whereas other people are strictly trying to get rid of stuff like profit and things like that. And also other places are buying to increase their inventory, where we just want to get rid of stuff. So it's a different attitude towards being a vendor at an exchange like that. So it was a lot of fun, and you get a lot of insight from Hodge about what it's like to run the Barry Game Exchange. So give it a listen. You can find it on the Cartridge Club forums probably, and the Cartridge Club app, and Cartridge Club website, all kinds of Cartridge Club stuff.
And they have a brand new website, actually, so head on over there. You could see our content on the front page sometimes.
When we remember to put it there.
And the forums, if you want to talk to us, ask us questions that are longer than 140 characters.
Yes.
You can do that there as well. Chris, anything for odds and ends?
Yeah. So some people have been asking for more Flock Talk, and we are currently working on a project that's going to be...
No. We can't talk about that.
No.
We cannot talk about what's
We
gonna
have
happen.
a secret odds and end that will reveal itself in the future. Chris has teased it just now.
I can't believe you did that. You dropped
Yes.
it.
That was a bit... Ha ha ha.
Also, we have a winner for the $20 gift card on Steam or PSN or Xbox
Microsoft, or
Nintendo. And that winner is P2. Totally random. P2, you won the gift card. Let us know what you want it for, and we will make sure you get it.
This is a bit ridiculous.
Oh no!
It's
a little bit
random.
ridiculous.
No, it's totally random.
It's random.
It's random. It's random.
Random generator.
So random.
If you're at home thinking that it's ridiculous, know that I'm on your side.
Chris, you're supposed to be on our side.
If
We
you
can only get through this together.
If you think it's ridiculous, maybe tweet at us at Flock of Nerds using the hashtag FlockTalk, and you might be the winner of the prize and realize how it's no longer ridiculous because it was random. So that's it for horror games this month. Thank you all so much for listening. For Kathryn and Chris, I'm Myles. Happy Halloween, everyone.